Stephanie, let me start with you. Not long to go now till that vote. How are preparations going, and what's security like there in Crimea?
Well, Clint, absolutely. It's the countdown is underway. It's less than 24 hours till that referendum is going to get started here in Crimea. Preparations, really, because this was a last-minute announcement. The announcement was made a week ago that this was going to be bumped up. This referendum was originally going to be held on the 30th, bumped back by 2 weeks. So things have really been sort of sliding into first base, as they say in the United States, going on the fly, very, very quick, putting up posters that are promising people that if they give a yes vote to Russia, their lives will be drastically improved, their salaries will be improved, their pension funds they'll see a boon to their pension funds, they'll see a slash in gas prices. That's what we're seeing on the exterior. Security-wise, there are so many different groups here on the ground that one's head may spin because it's sometimes difficult to discern. There are self-appointed defense groups. There are people we just ran into. I just met a man who had come from outside of the country to volunteer here. Crimeans who are feeling very patriotic, who have come back and they want to serve in a defense mode. We've got, of course, the unmarked troops that are Russian troops on the ground. And we have the Cossacks. So much defense and so much security here on the ground. It's tough to imagine that anything could really get out of hand. Clint.
Stephanie Freed there in Simferopol. Now to Jack in eastern Ukraine. Jack Barden, what are the people in Donetsk, where you are, what are they saying about Crimea's referendum?
Well, there's no doubt there's a lot of pro-Russia sentiment here, not just in this city, but as you move into the countryside, particularly as you get closer to the border, that sentiment rises. And we also saw in Kharkiv to the north last night, pro-Russia groups trying to take over the administrative headquarters again last night. During that, 2 police officers were killed and 5 others injured, according to the city officials there. So tensions very high. We have spoken to many people here, though, of course, that also support unity, that want to hold Ukraine together. It is becoming more difficult for them to come out on the streets. Over the past 48 hours, we've seen groups of young men coming out, standing on the corners throughout the city center here, not only intimidating people who would try to come out with a Ukrainian flag, but also if we try and interview them, coming up quite aggressively, pushing, shoving, verbal abuse, trying to stop us from doing so. Now, interestingly, when we turn the camera on them, they turn their heads and walk away. They don't want to be identified. We don't know who they are or where they're coming from, but they are making it more difficult to really try and ascertain whether the majority here are really supporting pro-Russia or whether they want to keep this country united.
Now back to Stephanie there in Simferopol. Stephanie, what's the general mood where you are there in Crimea proper?
Well, the general mood is optimistic, upbeat somewhat. It's a beautiful day, which could be very much the opposite because this is a cold region and a cold area, and we had some very cold days. People are out and about. It's a weekend. People tend to socialize, excuse me, and be out on the weekends. But there's caution, and there's some fear that perhaps things may get out of hand. That's why there's so much security here. People are cautious. And again, as I've said several times this morning, they're pulling out their money. They're really worried that after this referendum they can't get cash. And we're seeing that in many cash machines and banks, there is no cash. So people are also almost in a panic mode as well, but pretty much upbeat, lots of security again, but that fear of the cutoff of money.
Now, Jack, back to you there in Donetsk. An unnamed Russian diplomat in Ukraine said 300 employees from a private U.S. security service had arrived there in Ukraine. Has there been any official information on those claims?
No, there hasn't. We did hear that. That actually came out a few days ago, and it was corroborated by a video that's been circulating on YouTube, which certainly does seem to show men in US-style security equipment walking through a street. But, you know, the people there were calling Blackwater, the unnamed diplomat referred to them as Blackwater. We know it's not Blackwater because they ceased to exist as a company back in 2009 after a number of scandals in Iraq and Afghanistan. But could these men be from Academi, a company that rose out of that company, or from one of the other security companies? Well, we've been asking at the airport because it was said they came through there. We've also asked people here. We haven't been able to get any corroborating evidence that these men are in town. That's not to say they're not here, but of course analysts are also saying this could be just simply propaganda. Of course, having these sort of armed American mercenaries on the ground here would be a good pretext for annexation. But really, we've had no official word, no confirmation from eyewitnesses, and that situation remains quite murky.
Jack Barden in Donetsk and Stephanie Freed in Simferopol, thank you both.